old were you when you first heard a healthy mind in a healthy body? It's such a cliche, and yet, how many people are living it? Some people are living it extremely. And
Hmm.
the person we're going to be talking with today is one of those. Hi, everybody. I'm Victoria Moran, and it is my pleasure to be bringing you yet another episode 500 and something or other of the Main Street Vegan podcast. Such a real joy in my life that you choose to be with us today because you're special folks. I've met some of you, not all of you, and hope maybe one of these days we can all do the three-dimension thing. Wouldn't that be cool? Remember when everything was in three dimensions? Well, some things still are, and it's quite a treat. But we're going to have a treat today because we are going to be speaking with a friend of a friend who will soon become a direct friend. So here's how that goes. I was introduced to today's guest, Joe Gagnon, by Robert Cheek, the vegan bodybuilder that everybody loves to pieces. And so a friend of Robert's is a friend of mine. And then they sent me Joe's incredible book, Living Intentionally: How Intentionality Enables Success, Fulfillment, and Growth. Ooh, sounds like me, probably like you. Okay, let's get going. If you don't yet know Joe, he describes himself as relentlessly intentional, deeply curious, obsessed with unlocking human potential. He's a CEO, he's an ultra endurance athlete, a coach, and as we said, an author, his latest book being Living Intentionally. Living Intentionally, says Dan Buettner, author of The Blue Zones, provides a blueprint for a truly meaningful life. Well, let's have one of those and welcome Joe.
Oh, Victoria, thanks for the introduction. So fun to be here with you and your group. I love it.
Well, it is such a pleasure always to meet friends of friends. It's kind of like we've got a lot of that on the internet,
Mhm.
but to really get to talk to somebody that you already loves, it's good. So let's just start out getting to know you. I'm so fascinated by the ultra athlete aspect of your multifaceted personality. Were you an athletic kid?
No, hmm, not really at all. I probably ran around the playground, and did pretty average things that kids do, played baseball in the backyard, but never played high school sports or college sports. I think I went down sort of the invisible route that many of us do when we're growing up. There's the Letterman and the prom queen, and then there's the rest of us. I did find sort of a little bit of my path intellectually in college. I love the philosophy and sort of the big thinkers. But, even when I started working, it was all about sort of falling into the traditional norms, right? Being a hardworking white collar guy, trying to be, career mobile. Back then it was this like massive, intention to try and get to $100,000 a year, and I did that times many. Uh, and it, met a girl, got married, had a couple of kids, nothing really much going on. I had not become plant-based. I was not athletic. I was not a writer. I knew how to do one thing, which was work and provide, and that was it. And sort of I was a fine actor, but really not intentional nor inspired. And so, no regrets, as I always say, like I was there for the decisions, but there was a moment when I started to realize there was much more to life. And then that's what the next 25 years has turned into.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned the football hero and the prom queen, because when I was at the age where that kind of thing was important, I wished I was the prom queen. But now I'm so glad I
Mm.
wasn't, because I think those people have a harder time later because they're trying to live up to this spectacular thing that happened when they were 17. Who can do that?
Yeah. I think it's even deeper. I think what it does is it reinforces the non-sustaining behavior of life. We try and reflect it back in the TikTok world today with views and fake ideas of what life looks like rather than the reality. There's nothing bad about the reality of life. Actually, I think the deeper you go, the more this idea of radical possibility becomes sort of something you could consider. But it doesn't just have to come in a form of, you know, a cheerleader or a football player, right? It comes in many forms. A creative artist, it could be a writer, it could be someone who works in business, it could be a teacher, it could be anything. And we can do that at levels that are far beyond what we start. And I think that the priority is not to impress others, it's actually to build a stronger self and then maybe even go beyond self at some point by leaving the ego behind.
Mm. Well, then let's follow your history a little bit further. What happened 25 years ago and what have you been doing since?
I always like to say I wish I like had this light bulb moment kind of thing and all so, smart. Uh, It was funny. I was at an event, worked way too much. I haven't had a beer or wine or anything in 20 plus years, but everyone was having a beer that night and there was some arm wrestling. And I tried and I couldn't win a single match. And I thought, is it possible to be this weak? Like, I hadn't thought about it. It was like, oh, I don't like this. And then, like a week later, someone said, you want to go for a run? And I barely finished a mile. And I was like, wow, this isn't great. And on the outside looked fine, wasn't like I was morbidly obese or anything. But inside I felt weak the deeper I reached in. And so little by little, I just started to build sort of a roadmap of improvement. And it became, a spreadsheet that I wrote down what I did 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week. And it grew and it grew. And then it made me explore on the edges of performance the idea of nutrition and the impact that that would have, or alcohol and that would have, or sleep and mindset, and all these concepts that come to be through the experience of leaning into our capability. And so I was a rather curious person, and it started reinforcing that every time I tried. I was like, oh, wow, maybe there's more. Maybe there's different. Maybe I can learn. And so it was self-reinforcing. It was starting to define me as a person. It was building vitality and it was building sort of resilience along the way. And, then I started writing about it because I thought I should share that and talk to myself every day. And so, it's been, 9,000 days in a row of exercising and almost 5,000 days in a row of writing. And, you become what you do. And then of course we can talk about the food and all the rest of that. But they were all integrated, Victoria. It was like this, if you want to be more, then you have to do something different. And I think early in that process, even the first third, I would say I realized this should stop living the life the world was telling me to live and live the life that I wanted to create. And I don't know why we fall for the narrative that is in the common, language. And because I've never found anyone who's all that happy at the end of that, or feels satisfied, or serving their community, or, inspired to do more, because that narrative is very limiting. And that narrative is a very selfish narrative. And that actually doesn't really fall well into the human system um, natively. And so the more you write your own narrative, the more exciting it becomes and the more self-reinforcing it is. And then you leave the other stuff behind and then you're free to fly. And that's been really amazing.
Oh, you just reminded me of something. I moved to New York from Kansas City, Missouri at the age of 50. And I had only been married to my husband, my second husband, for not quite 2 years. But before I met him, my daughter and I knew that we needed to come to New York. She's a performer. I write books. She needed to be where the performing stage was bigger. I needed to be where they published the books. And then along came this beautiful man. I mean, everything I had hoped for. And we got married. And I thought, well, that New York thing is just going to fade away. Well, it didn't. And it turned out that my daughter and I came to New York. The idea was for a year, if we set the world on fire, my husband would then follow. And when we left that morning, there was this box on the kitchen table, and I opened it up, and it was a beautiful pin of a multicolored tropical bird and a little note that said, "Time to fly."
Mm,
And I've just always cherished that. And things happened, my husband ended up working in Europe and Asia for a while, and so we didn't need to be in Kansas City after all. And then ultimately, we have been for many, many years together in New York. But I just love that idea that sometimes you just have to fly, and you're
mm,
lucky if those around you support it. And if not, you still have to do it
yeah.
when the
Yeah.
nest is.
I stopped waiting for permission because I think often we think we need permission to live the life we want.
Yeah.
The priority that I realized somewhere in the middle of the journey was self first, family second, work third. You cannot serve the other two if you don't serve yourself. You have to create, this stable platform, around both all these elements that I would put as the pillars of life, but about the integrity of who you are and the character of who you are and how you're going to show up in this world because there is a lot of noise and you got to hear the signal through the noise. And the only way to hear that is to develop your own powerful system. But if all we're doing is sort of, the pendulum swing from one side to the other because of the common collective thinking of what life should be, admittedly, I guess on some level it's fine, but it only applied a couple thousand years ago when we didn't live in a world of abundance, when we hadn't defined what we would call a social contract, when we hadn't a full value system we could reach into, and the physical being understood as, a powerful machine. And so now that we have all of that, we have really sort of no excuse to not put the priorities right. And when we do, the irony is that the selfishness which we see around us, which I think, affects a lot of people in the vegan plant-based world, is like we can't understand why someone behaved that way. Because there's a better alternative across the board, not just in how we eat, but how we live and how we treat each other, and starting with respect. And so this is the narrative. This is the storyline that we need to be talking about. And the irony is that it serves everyone better when we do that. It actually seems sometimes, that we can't get to that place, but I know that we can get to a better place and it doesn't come through the selfishness, and the self-centeredness and the sort of the noisy life that really at the end of the day is just unidimensional. But it's a journey that took me 25 years. It took like the the practices of living differently, the commitment to it. What you do on a daily basis is who you become. I mean, it's pretty simple. I think you didn't think that, like Dr. B always says, you're gonna eat 88,000 pounds of food in your life. You better think that it has an impact on you, like as just one example, you know, if you don't move every day, how would you think you'd be able to move later on in your life? It's so much, so obvious. There's no genius in the ideas, just in the execution.
You said something that some people might find confusing, and I would appreciate
Mm.
clarification. You talked about putting yourself first,
Mm.
self-care first, and then you said that all of our problems come from living selfishly. So please
Mm.
juxtapose those for us.
Well, I think that selfishly means that the only thing you're doing is trying to amass sort of, physical belongings to try and have power over other people, not power with people. And so that's what selfish is. It's not sharing in the resources of the earth that we're supposed to share. And but taking care of oneself is about being the best version of ourselves that can show up with what I talked about before, with values and a social contract and support for each other and sharing in the abundance that we have. So the while the first few letters are the same, there's a massive shift from, the selfish individual. Like, so we don't need to have power over each other to have a beautiful life. We can have power with each other. But even in the power with, you have to have a strong sense of self to show up with each other as peers. And if you don't have a strong sense of self, then you run the risk of having someone to take power over you, which then creates this antagonism for no reason.
Mm,
Well, maybe has a reason, but no benefit. Let's say that.
yes. Yeah, like the country song, you've got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything.
That's
So
right. Hmm.
let's just get you on the physical plane
Yeah,
oriented here for everybody to know you, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the book Living Intentionally and the
sure.
concept of living intentionally. So let's talk about you in terms of food and then in terms of these incredible athletic endeavors that are part of your resume. So why plant-based, especially now
Mm.
when so many people that I'm sure you run into every day are doing something different?
Yeah, back to like Joe's not a genius. So the first thing was, I don't know, 35 years ago, Victoria, every time I ate red meat, I got sick. It was like pretty easy. I couldn't, my stomach killed me. It was, and I was like, oh, if I just cook it really well done, I can eat it. And I finally realized, like, what am I doing? Like, this is stupid. So that was sort of easy, like I was a kid who worked at McDonald's and ate hamburgers. I grew up in an Italian family and we ate meat every week. It was culturally aligned, but physically didn't work. That was the first phase. And that phase was sort of easy because then you left with all the rest of the stuff you could eat, chicken and fish and pork and turkey. And then I started leaning hard into my athletic life. And I was realizing that what I ate affected my performance. And I'm not a doctor, but I can use the word inflammation as a way to represent more inflammation from eating both processed foods and meats that were not serving my digestive system. I found that I was struggling a little bit. And so I was like, oh, let me try to eliminate this. By the way, I had no one to reference. I wish I had known a Robert Cheek or Victoria. I didn't know anyone. I was like alone on this journey. So I was just taking pieces out and feeling better. And then the more I did that, uh, at the end, it's like I think everyone has their journey. Like at the end, it was I liked having sushi and because it was like a cultural experience when I was in Japan, I had that memory. But then I was like, okay, well, I don't know. To me, the fish was more about they weren't treated any better than any other animal. Even if I could sort of justify maybe there's some health benefits to that, it started getting all integrated. So it was this first health directly, then performance, then sort of treatment of animals. And I was like, okay, I just can't tolerate this and I feel better. And by the way, the palette of food opened up to just this wide array of interesting foods that everyone thinks, well, it's pretty boring if all you eat is meat, but it's pretty exciting if you live in the plant world. And then it was highly integrated, the alcohol piece, because again, I'm not on a campaign. Like I'm not here to tell people what to do. But the alcohol was similar. I was like, wow, this is not how, why am I taking this poison in me? Wasn't helping me. And every time I didn't have a beer or a glass of wine, I felt better. So that was like really easy. Like when someone says, do you miss it? I'm like, I was like, miss what? Like feeling crappy? Like, I don't understand this missing thing. Like, yeah, I could still eat ice cream being vegan. It's like not a problem. Like if I want ice cream, I can have it. It just doesn't have to have dairy in it. You might say, well, Joe, that's a lot of calories. I'm like, well, I think I need more calories personally, so I'm okay with some of this, but the mindset is just wrong. And even if just people ate less of these things that were bad for us, like I don't believe in my lifetime we'll have 100% plant-based living. But if people ate 50% of that, we would be far better off. And so my own personal experience was I have, and you know this, Victoria, from reading the book and talking probably to Robert, which is I have pushed hard into this platform I live in, right? Exercise every day, write every day, take on very stressful jobs, travel around the world. Like, I have pressed it hard and it works because of these choices I made. No other way. It just wouldn't. I would have fallen apart. I have no idea where I'd be. So that's how I got here.
Wow, that is really inspiring. And speaking of inspiring, you've done all these marathons on different continents.
Yeah.
Tell us, tell us.
I like to think this way. When we're kids, we're the most curious creatures everywhere. Like, I mean, it's amazing what you want to know, what you want to do. Climb this, read that, draw this, see that, dive. Like, I have never lost my curiosity. That has been with me forever. And so, as I started leaning into this new lifestyle, I always had this, I wonder what that would feel like. Oh my God, I want to know. And so I was like, this is Joe's privilege is to feel something that other people have not felt. So the simplest one, of course, we felt is like, go run in the rain. The next time it's pouring rain, Victoria, walk into Manhattan without your coat. I mean, not in 12 degrees or what, 30 degrees where it's not snowing, but like get soaking wet and feel it. What's going to happen? You'll walk back, maybe you're shivering, and you'll be warm in a minute. Like, but that feeling is different and it's amazing sensation. And so that's just like the start. And so as I went on this journey and I started, I ran a 10K, then I ran these duathlons, which was run and bike and run. And then I said, oh, I should add swimming. And I became a triathlete, did swim, bike, run, and then I said, oh, I should be an Ironman. And they're just escalating, like, okay, swim 2.4 miles, bike 112, run a marathon 26 miles. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I could run more marathons. And so I started doing 5 to 10 of them a year. And everyone does like one a year maybe. And then I was like, wonder like what would make me sort of scared and excited to go try. And, we would take the whole podcast on how I got there, but I got to this idea that I could run a marathon on 6 different continents in 6 days. I could fly overnight between Sydney to Singapore to Johannesburg to London to Sao Paulo to LA, 30 plus thousand miles of flying. I could run this 157 miles. I could sit in coach. I could sleep 14 hours for a week, eat peanut butter and jelly every day, and I could make this happen like out of just me. I'm like, I could create this whole plan, this idea. I booked the flights. I had some friends pick me up at every airport and I'd run the 26 miles, they'd drive me back, and I did it again and again. And oh my God, it was the most amazing experience. And as I write about in the book, I was so curious. I wanted to see how bad it could feel in a funny way. I'm like, this should really be hard. I want to feel really like struggle. So I wrote, the lows will be the highs. And when I finished, I was like, where was the hard? Like, yeah, sure, I was tired and it was a little bit, my legs were sore, but like, never felt this like desperate, hard, and terrible feeling. And the reason is my mindset was so positive. I was curious. I wanted to know what it felt like. And it felt amazing. I met amazing people. The week was magical, literally magical. It worked beautifully. And when I crossed the finish line, in Santa Monica, we were partnering with a school, a high school there called the New Roads School. And these young kids were out there like, what would they want to do? This, oh my gosh. And so that was one of the sort of the steps out of the comfort zone into what seemed improbable or mostly impossible, things that if we went back in time, when I was 25 years old and told me that I would one day do that, I would say, oh, you're nuts. Like that's not possible, never happened. And so, and it's built from there. I continue to be curious to find out what I can do and what I can experience. And I don't know, I just haven't even come close to what the edges are.
So, do you think that it's your mindset that enabled you to do that? Do you think all bodies or almost all bodies could do that? Because as somebody
Mm.
who shares your sense of adventure, I kind of got a little bit of the feeling you were talking about. A couple of the things I've done, like bungee jumping and things like that, it was like, whoa. For about
Mm,
10 days after that, I felt like Wonder Woman. But I was an overweight kid, never liked the sports or anything like that. Blew my knee out trying to run in my 20s when we knew running was going to be a thing, but we didn't know you shouldn't run around a little canvas track, a little concrete track in canvas kids. And so it's just like, oh, I exercise to be healthy, but the idea of
mm,
exercising beyond what might be necessary, I've just never thought my body could do it. Do you think
mm.
that's just wrong thinking?
Well, I wouldn't say we're all exactly the same. I can only say this. I was not an athlete. I had no genes that would get me there. My father never did anything. My mother never did anything. Uh, I started when I was 39. I had no foundation, right? So I think the gradual growth over 25 years allowed me to build a platform that allowed me to do that. If I have an advantage, it's not physical, it is my mindset. I am willing to embrace discomfort more than people. I believe we find meaning through suffering. The word failure to me is not a word. I am not a quitter. I am defining myself by my mindset, not by my accomplishments. And the power of who I am is inside all of us. There is no, now, I know someone would say to me, "You don't understand." And I'm like, sort of, I do. But that doesn't mean I'm trying to be right. It just means you should open up your mind to the possibilities. That's it. And where it ends, I don't know for any of us. But I wouldn't be afraid of trying one time around the block. Like I've run 56,000 miles now since with this 25 years. And I don't relate to my age, but it is a fact, right? So I'm 64 years old. And not just did running, like I did 2,000 pull-ups in December in 11 hours and 40 minutes. And that wouldn't be pretty typical, except for the fact that I had already done, close to 1 million pull-ups over the past 25 years. Like I couldn't do any. Like, I couldn't do one. And so, like, I am only here to say that if you want to, you can do more than you think you can. I don't know what anyone's limits are, but they're way further than what you think they are. And my knees and everything else, like I don't run hard and fast. I'm not sprinting. I am movement for purpose, right? I'm movement because I want to create vitality and resiliency. I want to find a form of active meditation. I want to find a place where I am experiencing the outdoors and getting closer to nature. I want to reward, the way the human system was meant to work by the way that I show up every day. And it's fed back to me in such positive ways that I can only hope that everyone else, gets to game level 7 and not stuck on game level 2 because of what someone told you. Look, when I was in fourth grade, someone said I wasn't good at math. And when I was in eighth grade, I was too short to be in the play. And when I was in high school, I was laughed at and bullied. And like, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. Like, that is okay. But that isn't where we have to end.
Mm,
Every moment is a beginning. Every moment is a beginning. And that part I will not come off. Will
yes.
not.
Wow. Well, people who are watching this on YouTube might wonder why every so often I'm looking down like this. And that's because I'm writing down some of these things that you're saying, because I do want to put them in the show notes. But you speak really poetically. And I love that in addition to the plant-based eating and the movement every day, you say you write every day. And as a
Mm,
writer myself, uh, started writing professionally at 14. I remember I got paid 35 cents a word, which is better than you get on the internet, but this has been life, and it's a very magical discipline too. You want to
Mm.
give us a minute on writing before we get to what you have written?
Yeah. Wow. Like I think that the underlying theme, Victoria, is we are what we do. So I have become a writer, but I
Yeah.
was not a writer. Okay, let's really be clear. But I've written for 4,650 days in a row. So if you played piano for 4,650 days in a row, you'd be a great pianist. Okay,
Mhm.
so like just like get over it. Come on. Like we can become, right? But the writing in the beginning, I think the best thing someone ever told me was don't write for other people, write for yourself, because if no one reads it, it's still valuable to you. So every day when I write, I'm not journaling. I'm writing something that can be published, and I publish it in a blog, and I've written two books, and I've written a lot of articles and papers. But I always want to make sure that I have a standard, but that I'm talking to myself. Like this is my reminder. This is a daily practice. This is a way to elevate my thinking to make me more accountable to these philosophies. Like you don't get yourself more than 24 hours away from, hey, what do you believe in? This thing called, living intentionally. And so in the beginning, I was writing a page a day, and then now it's a paragraph a day other than the book. Um, I I've learned how to delete what I write. I've learned how to appreciate it as, almost an independent third party. Like, oh, that's not very good, Joe. Like so. Uh, but it's developed a great vocabulary. It feels like a power base. And then it also the one really odd thing you probably wouldn't expect me to say is there are a lot of people who ask me like, when am I going to stop? And then I'm like, what? That's the wrong question. Like, why? So it's like them saying, well, you're making me feel insecure. Like I'm here just like living my life. I'm not trying to make anyone feel anyway. But uh, I basically say, look, I have these daily practices. I wake up and I move and I write and I breathe, right? That's the way you start your day. And if you start with those three daily practices, how how can't you start like you're on vacation every day? Like that's one of my philosophies. Every day is a vacation day because it's about a mindset. Like what is vacation, right? Other than appreciating life. I don't run from it. I am part of it. And then I bookend it with at the end of the day, some more exercise and some more writing. And so I start and end off of this beautiful platform. And that's what it really did for me. And so yeah, I like it. I also uh had fun writing the book because I felt like I needed to take some time to put down what I learned and the experiences that I had in a form that if someone was interested in this idea of living intentionally, that they could do that too.
Well, let's talk about the book. So, the inspiration for it and what you want people to take from it.
Yeah. So I think we should get 90%, of our sort of motivation from inside ourselves every day, like it should be about our purpose, what we set out to do, and how do we align our activities around our purpose. And so I knew that ahead of time, right? I was living deeply into that. And if I was to help build people into the people they want to become, then I need to be a builder of myself. So that's what I wrote about in my purpose. And so then I felt like there needed to be a telling of the story. Like, what did you learn over 25 years? And I wanted to leave something for others to appreciate and use if they wanted to. So when I set out to do it, the outline was really easy. The outline of the book started with our why, started with the pillars of, sort of intentional living, reflection, and then this whole section on discomfort, suffering, and failure. Like, that is language that we have created that is an obstacle rather than an enabler. I want to create it as an enabler. So the whole middle section of the book is about these negative words that really are enablers. And then wow, we show up in a community that we live in. And so I wanted to talk about that, the ripple effect of our actions, being present every day, about the journey that we're on. Then this, you know, content around the health platform, 5 pillars of, exercise and nutrition, sleep, mindset, and community, having a focus so you would know something every day. Like, what if you kept yourself accountable to something that you did in those 5 categories every day? How would your life change? And then all of us should feel a responsibility as we move in our life to the impact we make and the legacy that we leave. And that isn't like a fatalistic perspective, it's a responsibility. If we want it to be a better world, then let's do something about it. And so that's where the book came from. Early on, like we all struggle. I like struggle. And one of my really good friends from 20 years, I was telling her, I'm like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't write this. And she just said something like, just be quiet and start typing. I don't want to hear from you again. And so I was like, okay, fine, got it. And then I just sort of ripped through it. And then it started to make sense to me. And as you're a writer, I probably rewrote it 5 times and took out a lot and put stuff back in and wanted to make people feel something and have a framework and then, leave a call to action. So it's been fantastic and fun and makes me want to write my third book now. And so I think I'm now committed.
I love to hear you say that because I know that there's another aspect of your life, your business aspect. You're a
Mm,
very techie guy, and yet you write books. So I feel you're very close to my heart by still believing in the printed word.
yeah.
So let's talk about the title of this book, Living Intentionally. I think a lot of people would say, what's intentional living? I get up every day, I go to work. What more do you want? What does it really mean, in your view, to live intentionally?
Mm. The language, Victoria, the language that we have, how we describe. So I think that to be intentional, we can't be doing things by default. We actually have to make active decisions and they need to connect to something and they need to start with our why. Like, what's your purpose? Why are you here? It can't be to watch Netflix, right? It just can't. That's not a purpose. And so I spent a lot of time in the first chapter defining for people how they could think about their purpose. I go through a description of myself and other people, and then I give a bunch of questions for us to ask of ourselves to start to dig a little deeper. And once we get that foundation, then we can get to this idea of conscious choices that fit to what our purpose is. And now we're starting to be intentional. So, if indeed I wanted to be a good executive coach, then I need to have done that job. If I wanted to, help someone run a marathon, then I probably should have run a few marathons. I need to have a context. And so the example I wrote about in the book was I was working, and a bunch of guys after work said, "Hey, let's go to the bar and hang out." And I'm like, "Nah, I'm not that interested." It's like, "Oh, but all the great conversations are going to go on there, and we're going to like all the insider stuff." And I'm like, "Well, we could go on a run and have the same conversation." And they're like, "Go on a run? Are you kidding me?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'll see you later." They went to the bar, I went for a run. I had to hold to what I was trying to create, not what they wanted to create, because it stuck to my why, which is if I were going to go help build strong people into strong people, then I needed to be a strong person and I had to stick to that. So it drives our choices. We don't just because the wind blows all of a sudden, like it starts to rain, you're not going to go outside, it gets a little bit late and you don't finish the paper you need to write, whatever it is, it connects to the why, then it's very easy. The same with being plant-based. Like if you have your reasons, do you come off of it? Not really, because you took a lot of time to get to it. And so, I mean, the vegan plant-based community is very intentional. Why wouldn't we make that about the rest of our lives?
Mm.
It can't just be about how we eat. There's five pillars. Nutrition is a really big one, but movement, exercise is really critical. Like if you want to serve, like, well, we both know this. You can eat really poorly as a vegan too. But let's say you eat very well as a vegan and not even whole food, just very well, right? Good nutrient balance and but you never move, well,
Mm.
that's not okay. And if you have a bad mindset, if you walk around with this negative attitude all the time and don't show up in your community and you don't sleep well, I'm sorry, that's not intentional enough. We need to be intentional in all of that, in the deepest level of the design, if we're going to get to the radical possibility of getting into our potential. Like, you save money. Imagine something as crazy as you had $10 million dollars in your brokerage account and you never used any of it and you died with $10 million dollars in your brokerage account. What was the utility of that money? Nothing. Zero. And it's the same, the potential that we sit on. We sit on $10 million dollars of potential inside us. We need to use that. Can't have no utility when we don't do anything with it. Shame on us. It's like, why wouldn't you want to serve your family, your community, your world better? Like, show up, deeper, richer. Like, even forget the word happy. I don't sometimes know what that means, but feel like you actually leverage the capability you had. And the minute you start doing that, oh my gosh, everything changes, right? The resilience is high, the struggle is okay, the ability to support people is what you do. I mean, it's just like this like I can just think of this bright star that opened up in front of you, and you're like, oh my God, I see the light. Because this is what you feel, right? And it is so different. So that's what intentionality gets to you. Now, it doesn't happen in a day. Like I am patient. I didn't need this to happen in a day, a week, a month, or a year. I was like, my God, I hope I have another 50 or 75 years to live. Like, why wouldn't I set out a path to creating more and better and more intentional over that lifetime? And that's what the opportunity is. And so hope I answered the question, didn't rattle on too long there.
No, no, it's brilliant. I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like to be like your next door neighbor, be able to get some of this every
Mm,
day from you. But I know you're saying we need to get it from ourselves, so the message is coming through. So tell us a little bit about this other aspect of your message, which is rather different in the general kind of self-help genre. You talk about embracing discomfort.
mm.
What's important about that? Why do we need it? And tell us what it's done for you.
So I'm in the middle of a 100-mile race and maybe TMI, but I got this terrible rash. I fell, hit my head, and it's bleeding. I am tired and hungry. Got another 40 miles to go. It's hot. I'm sweaty. And I think of there's a couple of people who dropped out of the race, and I'm like, this is just discomfort because I know it's going to happen. If I stopped within an hour, I'd be fine. You know, this is not a reason to quit. And so I got this metacognition level that tells me that discomfort is a noise, it's not the signal. The signal is I have the strength and the capability. I trained for this. I know how to finish this. I can get through to the end. It's like you writing a book and there's a point where you just don't know what else to write and you have to stick with it. It's a child who is challenging you through the terrible twos and you're like, I know that one day they won't want to sleep in bed with me and we'll stop crying. Like these are just this discomfort is a noisy system. And I don't know why we would listen to the noise. Look for the signal. You got to go back to the signal. What is the core of what's going on? And are you ready for it? And is this what you're here to do? And so once you embrace that discomfort is noise and it's actually always going to be there, because the truth of the matter is the human system isn't like this perfectly optimized thing. Like it actually has a little bit of flex in it. And the more that you understand that that's what's happening and you listen beyond, it's the same thing as someone telling you, oh, Victoria, you don't need to write another book. Why would you need to write another book? You already wrote another book. And why would you like, what do they mean by that? Right? You would say, that's noise. I know what I'm here to do. Thank you. Appreciate your feedback. Be very polite. Be polite to the discomfort. Thanks. I appreciate that you're giving me these signals, but they're not really signals to stop. So discomfort never rises to the level to quit. I don't want to be defined as a quitter in my heart and my soul. I am not one of those. And I want you to know that and the world to know that. So if we set out to go do something, we are going to get it done. That's it. There isn't like not if it's possible, we are going to get it done. And so that is the power that we create inside ourselves when we work through discomfort. And I lived a life with no money. I lived a life with all the struggle of not having a big diploma or any kind of network. I had one magical thing in my life, two beautiful parents and a partner who's with me for 37 years, my wife, my two daughters. That's the power I trade off of, right? And their love is all I need. And the rest of the world, I'm sort of coming to help you. That's what I'm here. And so, yeah, I actually love discomfort. I find it to be something we should all find and feel and say, okay, got it. That's what that is.
Wow. Well, a lot of people would say there's no shortage of that in 2025.
Yeah, amen. Like I ran this race just recently, a couple months ago in Death Valley, 135 miles, 120 degrees, three mountain passes. There was no shade, there's no place to hide. It's going to be miserable, sure. I finished it. I felt great. I was smiling. I was happy, and it was hard, but I trained for it. I got ready for it. I was prepared at every level. I felt like that was the biggest privilege I could ever get, right? Was to go embrace that and always seek it out. You know, sometimes we look at other people and we think, wow, I wish I had what they have, right? What if you didn't have to do that? What if you said, I can have something other people wouldn't have? Like the willingness to tolerate discomfort, the willingness to build integrity inside yourself, a willingness to seek out radical possibility, this idea that we actually can perform better than we ever thought we can. That is our advantage. That's the one that sadly everyone else won't go after, but that is the one we can go after. We don't need permission for that. And when we do, the clouds clear, the sun shines, life becomes beautiful, and you're sort of on the other side, and you're like, I wonder how come I didn't come here sooner.
Wow. This is great. God bless Robert Cheek for making this introduction. So, everybody, our guest today is Joe Gagnon. Is that correct? Did I say that right? Gagnon. His book is Living Intentionally: How Intentionality Enables Success, Fulfillment, and Growth. And I will put all the ways to find him on the show notes at mainstreetvegan.com. But just for now, I will let you know that he is Joe Gagnon on LinkedIn and the High Performance Life on Instagram. His website is thehighperformancelife.com. So, are you wanting to live a more high performance life? I can't imagine that you've listened this far and are not saying, yeah, yeah, give me some of that. I'll even take some discomfort on the side, maybe just a half portion to start with.
Sure.
So, before we continue with more with Joe, I just want to update you a little bit on some goings on in the world of Main Street Vegan. September 27th, cohort 37 of Main Street Vegan Academy starts. Now, I cannot tell you that forever after, or even after this year, it is going to stay in its current wonderful format. We used to be in person live in New York City. That was great, but you had to get here. And since the pandemic, we have been live on Zoom. And that means that every course is built from the ground up. The electives have to do with the people who are in the class. Everything is geared to you. Our base courses give you the certification as a vegan lifestyle coach and educator. And people go out with that. They start businesses, they're podcasting, they're working for plant-based companies and for animal rights charities. They are doing all sorts of amazing things like our guest is talking about today. Now, we are not an online course. We're really there. We're looking at you. We know you. You get to talk. You get to talk to the instructors. You get to know them through our private Facebook group. It's really cool. The world is not really built for that anymore, and lots of programs are going into pre-packaged online courses. That may be what happens to Main Street Vegan Academy going forward. I'm just not sure. But right now, it is miraculous and unique. Since 2012, training and certifying vegan lifestyle coaches and educators, and we have a few spaces left. I think it's 7 as we're recording this today in late August 2025 at our special highly discounted rate. This is in honor of people being on the carnivore diet. We need vegan lifestyle coaches and educators more than ever. And because you're my friend, you listen to this podcast, use the uh, word friend, all capital letters in the discount code, and you can come to Main Street Vegan Academy for half price. So check us out, mainstreetvegan.com. Everything you want to know about the Academy. If you have any more questions, there's a way to ask them. And also, mainstreetvegan.com is where you'll find the show notes for this episode and information about Joe Gagnon living intentionally. So, Joe, let's say somebody is all with this. Okay, I'm going to be doing it. I'm going to be doing whatever is the next big thing, getting fit, going fully plant-based, something in my career, something in my relationships. Yes, I'm down with it, but I'm in a kind of gap. I'm in a
Mm.
hole. I'm kind of stuck. What do I do? What do you tell that person?
I think the first place I always ask people to start is sort of with a week assessment kind of thing. So write down on a piece of paper Sunday through Saturday, write down the hours of the day. And then for 1 week, track what you did with each hour of the day. And then at the end of the week, add it up, whatever way you want to categorize it, and ask yourself, are you happy the way you're spending time? And I think what we usually come back to is like, maybe not. Maybe some of it was, too many hours of this, too few hours of that. And so this baseline assessment is this acknowledgement that the currency of time is the power that we're going to use to change our lives. So imagine if you could just pull a few hours back a week on the way to many hours back a week from how they're used today. What was possible? So start with like maybe we could just pull 15 minutes a day on the way to an hour a day. That was about ourselves and about our meeting the pillars of life. Are we doing something with our nutrition, with our exercise, our mindset, our sleep, and our community? And it is the beginning of building the foundation. But we start off with an assessment and then a humble perspective of what we can accomplish, and just let that play out for a little while, 15 minutes, until you've sort of really got to a point where you don't compromise on that anymore. Whatever it is, yoga, meditation, reading, walking, I don't care, just as long as it's intentional and fits to one of the 5 pillars. And then in a couple of months, then come back to your schedule and say, I think there's more time that I could put into it. And give yourself a 10-year horizon, and you can increase that amount of time per week. The 168 hours, if you subtract out your sleep, which is essential, and your work, you'll still realize that you have a lot of time that you can do something with, even if you're a family with small children. So that's the starting point that I always work with people on. Find a community who's supportive. You know, I even wrote my email address in my book. Everyone's like, wow, why did you do that? I said, look, if someone wants to reach me, they should reach me because I'm here to help. I want to get people encouraged and know they have someone out here supporting them. Even if people close to them are not supporting them, I am. And so that's the starting point. I want you to have this sort of, you know, opportunity that I found. Maybe it took me a little longer than it'll take you because I was just sort of like figuring it out. Uh, but that's the place to start, and I think it'd be very powerful for everyone.
Well, the fact that you have done it is going to, I think, shorten that learning curve for everybody else. And thank you for putting it into this beautiful, beautiful book, Living Intentionally. Now, at the end of the book, you have this really cool message about continuous growth. I think it was a little bit what you talked about. People are saying to you, when are you going to stop?
Mm.
And so what does it mean to live this life beyond limits? And how can the people listening start on that journey?
Yeah, I think modest expectations. You don't start off thinking you're going to run 100 ultra marathons or any of that. It's sort of stepping into just a little more all the time. You're like, the human system is made to thrive, not to survive, right? So our mitochondria will increase, our neurons will increase, our muscle fibers will increase. Everything about us gets better. Our, autonomic nervous system works better through breath work. There's just everything that starts to improve, right? And so I don't think it actually is about having a destination. It's about how we show up on the journey there. Like we aren't on a path, we are the path. And so in that, it just opens up. It's like, you climb a mountain and you get to one peak and you think that's the top, and then you look up and there's another one. Embrace it, appreciate it, and live for it. Some of the stuff just shows itself when we start to build a new set of capabilities that we couldn't imagine until we start into it. And so, but yeah, I never really made it where I would like be so disappointed I couldn't keep going. I just gave myself more time. Like, who was I trying to impress? Just me. Like, I wasn't even impressing. I was just trying to live. And I can just say to everyone confidently that we stick to it. You'll love the transformation. By the way, everyone else in your life around you will love you for it too, because your perspective will be so much more positive, resilient, full of vitality, power. They'll be like, oh, wow, look at that. Someone says to you, you're just too optimistic. I'm like, thank
Oh,
you. That's a great criticism. Like, let's
yeah,
find ourselves there.
that's a good one. So it sounds in listening to you, Joe, that you don't hang around with fear or anxiety very much. What would you say to people who do?
Why? What are we afraid of? Like, when I had that first job and my car was stolen, my girlfriend broke up with me. I had to move in my parents' basement. So I was like, well, I guess if I could survive that, how bad could it be? I always like the worst it could be. So I have to go back and work at McDonald's and live in a studio apartment. I could do that. Like I'm just gonna love life. So it look, we're not in. I mean, if you're in Afghanistan and you're in war, I mean, that might be different. But for the rest of us, I think we just over dramatize. And the minute we can embrace sort of what the worst might be, then it never happens. And then it opens up all the possibilities. It might not happen, I wrote about it. Sometimes it doesn't happen on our time scale, but that's okay. It's okay. That's why grace in the middle of grit and groundedness really matters. Give ourselves a little bit of grace. It's okay. Joe, you're not here to be something someone else thinks you should be, and there is no such thing as perfect, just the best representation of who you should be.
Wow. You make good quotes and a beautiful book. And it certainly looks like, from not knowing you well yet, I hope that will change, a beautiful life. So thank you so much, Joe Gagnon. And I want to just close today, everybody, with a quotation from Joe. He says, I am driven by a simple mission, helping people realize they are capable of far more than they believe is possible. My life and my book, Living Intentionally, are rooted in the belief that growth happens at the edge. It is in the uncomfortable, uncertain, and transformational moments that we find out who we truly are. Ooh. Now, let's go out and make Main Street vegan.